I only wanted to explain why you're wrong, not start an incident response, by user law techie. Occasionally, I take on a cybersecurity consulting job that changes during the engagement. This is one of those stories. I'm finishing up reviewing and modifying an evaluation report for a client. The consultant who wrote the report is Janie, new to consulting but possessing a solid technical background from a few years securing colleges and universities. I happen to be on the road this week, so I'm doing this in a mid-grade hotel in a city I'd never visit unless paid. It's the afternoon, I've skipped lunch, so I'm writing suggestions to Janie while working out time/food quality trade-offs via Google Maps. I find a well-rated, local, non-chain place that's around 20 minutes away and looks wonderful. I hit send on my email to Janie and am about to shut my laptop, grab a book and head off to eat, but I simultaneously get a text and a Teams message from my boss. The Teams message just reads incoming and is a link to a call starting in a few minutes. I quickly make the room and my upper body presentable. The call starts and I'm the only person from my firm facing a small team of venture capital types. They smile like sharks, have no time for jokes and wear fleece vests with logos. There's one other person, a younger man, wearing a suit and tie. He's not smiling at all. A brief round of introductions. Everybody but the suit and I are vice presidents. Suit's a senior associate at a law firm that wouldn't recruit at my law school. One of the shinier VCs explains why we're all here. Shiny, as you all know, our fund is considering investing in Shiny Happy. We need to know what cybersecurity and privacy issues may impact that investment. Senior associate says the same thing, but manages to take 5 minutes with a few disclaimers. While he's talking, I'm looking up Shiny Happy. Shiny Happy is a fashion brand that fetishizes a Depression-era, simple living, back to the farm aesthetic for people who will never do physical labor. They seem to be a few social media accounts that look like a catalog of beautiful people looking wistful next to old farm equipment, a web store and a call center. Fine. I can think of what I'd be curious about before I invested. I figure I could get them the info they need with 2 weeks' effort. We'd be happy to do an in-depth evaluation of their infrastructure, data handling and regulatory compliance. I have some availability coming up. When would we be able to start? Shiny VC, we'd need the work to be complete by Friday of this week. Hey. Fine. I'll get you a proposal and an initial interview and document request in a few hours. Shiny VC sounds great. Approved. The call ends abruptly. I send a message to Janie, to see how much time she has this week to help me. She's got some time and lets me know that Joel, a fellow consultant, has been looking for hours before the end of the month. We work out a quick split of the work. Janie needs more time working with clients, so she's on point for status updates, scheduling and deliverables. Joel and I start with whatever we can find in the due diligence dump as well as the open internet. We learn a few things from our research and reading. Shiny Happy's web store is an old version of WordPress. That's a finding. The VC that just hired us has invested in one other lifestyle company which I'll call Office Park Commando, which sells expensive hunting, fishing, and tactical gear to men who use alpha male unironically. Oddly enough, the social media accounts show attractive male models with pickup trucks, but the stairs aren't wistful and the trucks are blacked out patrol buggies rather than rust, faded robin's egg blue and chrome. We have more questions, which is a good sign for the engagement. Talking to people or seeing documents that might answer those questions is not as simple. I escalate this a few times, because time is of the essence. The VC firm and Shiny Happy's management don't want outsiders talking to the rank and file, lest they guess the company's being sold. They will let me talk to the people who maintain the web store. I hate myself, but I schedule the call with Dave, SH's creative director. Janie, Joel, and I will attend, as will Senior as the lawyer representing the VC. Cost nothing makes a technical interview more awkward than the presence of counsel. Dave joins the call. I start with my chipper therapist voice, that we're just here to gather information and not to point blame. I'd like to start with the web store. Who maintains that? Dave, that'd be Mountain Advertising. They do all our IT stuff. Any documentation on how they built the system? Dave, like I said, they handle all that. Any chance I could ask them a few questions? Senior asks we'd rather not involve them. Shiny Happy is in a small town. Mountain Advertising might let some shiny sales or warehouse people know about the sale. Dave, can I give you some questions to ask Mountain? Tell them you're shopping for insurance and it's for the underwriters. Dave, well. I guess so. Give me your questions and I'll talk to them. Anything else? Me yet. I get that Mountain dealt with the technical stuff. Can you tell me about how you handle credit cards? Dave, we store credit cards in our customer relationship platform. Me, I see. Might you have filled out a form this year? I apologize for the acronym hell, but would PCIDSSSAQ have any meaning for you? It's a credit card processing thing. Dave, no. I've never heard of that requirement. Senior ass, let's not discuss regulatory requirements here. Me, there are technical details in that doc that would answer my questions, so we don't need to tip anyone off. I'm developing some kind of professional dislike for senior ass. I quickly write up a set of questions for Dave to relay, then have a conversation with Joel and Janie, with drinks, over Zoom. We're all commiserating about the consultant life, when we get a really dumb email from senior ass. He's deeply concerned that all we're asking about are questions about their data handling and infrastructure. He believes that we should be doing dark web searches for breaches in credit cards. Janie and Joel roll their eyes audibly on the call. It turns out that two of us have logins on Carter Markets, where stolen credit cards are bought and sold, for lurking, so we have opinions. We outline a brief summary about how card numbers are organized for sale and why they might not even know where they were obtained. Janie and Joel decide that proving another lawyer of something falls to me, so I put my good booze away. I walk out of the hotel to a convenience store for junk food and cheap bourbon. This memo will be written on Spite and Quality House. I'm working out how to order my argument on the walk back. I spend 2 or so hours pacing, writing, and drinking cheap booze from a plastic cup that was wrapped in a plastic bag. I've come up with this. Identifying the source of the cards from the cards themselves is like trying to ungrind beef. Visa could find the common merchant from a bunch of breached cards. Carter Markets and Carters prefer to use bulletproof hosts in friendly jurisdictions to onion sites. Even then, the Carters aren't chatting on open forums on the dark web about their current plans, they're on something that requires authentication. Even then, we should assume that every web store is getting poked at constantly. If I live in a place where it rains all the time, I'm more concerned with the condition of the roof than the weather report when I'm buying a house. At this point, I feel like one of those work avoiders who spends more time explaining why it's not their fault than actually doing something productive. So, I think, I've read that threat actors will use pastebin to share useful stuff like scripts, output, and notes. Before I send this screed, I should at least do a cursory search on pastebin. I get a handful of hits on the name. The first 4 are just lists of domains in fashion. The 5th is different. It's a list of domains, snippets of code and a script that searched for specific versions of WordPress. I look for other text files for the user and find a manifesto about how carding is just payback for the West meddling in Eastern European affairs and the humiliation of the 90s after the fall of the Soviet Union. The files have all been created in the last few months. Wonderful. I don't know if Shiny Happy's been breached, but at least someone's trying. I delete the bitchy email and text Janie and Joel. I think the scope of work just expanded. My keyboard is too slow, by user tops around 9243. I had a user once complain about her wired keyboard being too slow when typing. I figured it was some type of lag problem or other easily fixed performance problem. When I investigated, the user demonstrated the concern, but the keyboard was typing normal and there was no problem. The typing speed and all other settings were set properly and the user had never customized anything. Frankly, I was at a loss since I couldn't fix something that wasn't broken. Then I had an idea. I told the user I would be right back. I went and got a new keyboard, exactly the same as the one being used. I went to the user and told her I figured out the problem. She was using a 100 MHz keyboard, and I brought her a 300 MHz keyboard. Yes, I was lying through my teeth. When I had her try it out, she was immediately happy and was glad I solved the problem. The keyboard speed was the same as the one I replaced. This was the only time I ever flat out lied to a user, but I also knew the user was kind of a prima donna and needed some type of proof that her problem was being addressed. Nobody had any problems with the printer, by user Muspel. So, at my work, there was a recent project to replace our aging fleet of printers across the organization. This was a pretty big undertaking, but we had a good team working on it. After planning out all of the things that would need to happen for the swaps to happen seamlessly, it was decided that we would start by replacing the printer in the IT department. That way, it won't upset anyone else if something goes wrong, it's close by, and everyone in IT knows about the project so they'll report any issues instead of ignoring them. The new IT printer is set up, and after about a week there's been no issues. Great. We move forward and replace the next printer. Suddenly we're getting a bunch of reports of problems. Nothing about this printer should be any different, so there's a frantic hour or two before someone on the systems team thinks to check the IT printer. Turns out it has the same problems. It's just that nobody in IT ever has any reason to print anything, so it didn't actually get used at all during that week-long testing period. Luckily, the problems were minor and quickly fixed, and the rest of the rollout went fine, but it was an important lesson on the difference between asking "Does the printer work?" and "Did anyone have any problems with the printer?" It's just a simple upgrade, by user at SMK. Customer walks in with a gaming rig. They wanted to double their RAM and bought a pair of identical 16GB sticks to what they already had, 2x16GB, in their 4-slot Z590 motherboard. But they have a massive cooler that covers most of the slots and are nervous about removing it. So could we do the RAM upgrade for them? Sure, no problem at all. This will take 15 minutes tops. So one of my techs takes it in back and cleans it up. We always clean out systems that come in, grounded vacuum, ESD straps, never touch the internals, compressed air. Pull the cooler off, insert the 2 new DIMMs, cooler back on, power up. Motherboard RAM error light comes on. System shuts off a minute later. Pull the new memory, same thing. Switch to the new memory, same thing. Put in bench memory. Same thing. Swap DIMMs around in pairs and intermixed pairs. Same thing. Reset BIOS. Etc. RAM error. Ugh. Did the motherboard get zapped? We explain to the customer something unusual is going on with the motherboard, we'll get another in to swap out. The Ashrock, shutter, board they have is only available in China, so we grab a renewed MSI Z590. Few days later, it arrives, we install it, put in the CPU and memory. RAM error LED lights up. Maybe the CPU memory controller got damaged somehow. So, we order an identical CPU. It arrives, we install it. RAM error light. Both boards. My tech is dumbfounded. So she pulls out the open-air motherboard rig. We have to start swapping stuff. Outside the case. Eventually manages to get into BIOS with a certain combination. But all 4 sticks seem to be a no-go. But progress. Fast forward and she decides to put all the original stuff back into the case with all the RAM and admit defeat. Presses power. System boots normally. Stress tests pass with flying colors. Reboots, cold power cycles. All systems go. I can't even begin to imagine what caused all that. Maybe a standoff too close to a memory trace? We're going to look, but just a wild simple repair that took on a life of its own. Needless to say, we're going to build a new rig with the parts we bought. The tale of the chatbot begins, by user Steel Sufel. So we are the internal IT help desk for a megacorp. This year's project from management is to automate the first line of contact, things that are basically templates. How can I reset my password and the sort? Boss says it will be easy, we just have to take the tickets and send it over as training data. It has the questions and the answers already. Cue to a few days later when he realizes that the tickets are useless because no one ever bothers to write eloquent full sentences for anything, especially when the ticket is opened by the user. Because of course they don't, everyone has better things to waste their time on. Never mind the fact that half the data sources are barely more competent than the users. So he comes up with a new plan. Here is an empty shared Excel file. Everyone start writing user questions and their solutions into it. Yes, a dozen or 2 people are supposed to provide enough training data for a full chatbot, besides their usual tasks. And do it in a form that will actually be useful, so we should somehow predict what sort of nonsense the users would ask, what it actually means, and what the solution is in a way they would understand when the chatbot sends it to them. Oh, this will be a fun year.